Everybody, we'll give just a couple seconds here for everybody to get into the meeting before we get started. As we're all logging in, if you'd like, you can go ahead in the chat feature, introduce yourself, and maybe say if you're an elected official, what office you hold, where you're from, so we can all start to get to know each other. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jillian Hawkins. I'm the Assistant Executive Director here at the Illinois Democratic County Chairs Association. Thank you very much for joining us here tonight for this installment of the 2021 virtual training series. We're very excited to continue our virtual training series this year. A couple things before we get started. If this is your first virtual training, the training tonight's going to last about 45 minutes to an hour. So if you need to get up, get a drink of water, anything like that, go ahead and do it now. Try to put away distractions. That being said, the meeting is recorded. So if you miss anything or want to go back and review anything that we talk about here tonight, you're going to get a link to the recording as well as any slides that we present tonight. So you'll have those to refer back to. Everyone's going to be remaining muted during the training, but if you have any questions, again, the chat feature is open. Feel free to put any questions you have as we go along, and we'll have time for question and answer at the end. So again, if you just want to introduce yourself in the chat and just let everybody know who you are so we can get to know each other. And I will introduce our speaker tonight. We are joined by Jackson County Treasurer Liz Hunter. Treasurer Hunter was appointed to her office in 2019 and elected in 2020. She previously served on the Jackson County Board as Vice Chair and Chair of the Finance and Administration Committee. Prior to her current position, she was the Assistant Director of Communications for Undergraduate Admissions at Southern Illinois University. She's an active member of the Jackson County Democratic Party, an alum of the IDCCA Candidate Boot Camp, which some of you might be as well, and a graduate of the I Will Training Academy. And she's here to join us tonight to talk about the nuts and bolts in a countywide office. So with that, I will turn it over to Liz.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So bear with me just 1 second. Let me get this up. All right. So we are going to go over the nuts and bolts of serving in countywide office. As Jillian mentioned, I was appointed to be treasurer in October of 2019 and elected in 2020. This gave me an interesting and unique opportunity to observe the office for about a year before I was actually in it as an elected official. Before campaigning, it gave me maybe 4 to 6 months before I really started campaigning. So I had a little bit of an advantage there. I was on the county board, as Jillian said, a few other things. I was a 2019 Edgar Fellow. Edgar Fellows is a program that teaches politicians how to communicate and reach across the aisle to get things done. It's a very important program, especially this day and age when we have a lot of difficulty doing that and reaching across the aisle. So just a note on Edgar Fellows. I'm also Carbondale Township trustee. I'm the my Rotary Club treasurer and vice president-elect. I'm co-secretary of the Illinois Rural Partners Board, secretary of the Jackson County Democratic Central Committee, Precinct Committeeperson here in my neighborhood, and I'm on the executive board of the Hope Trust, which is an insurance pool for municipalities and counties. So without further ado, this training, I'm going to talk about how to begin as an elected official. We're going to talk about the duties and the dynamics, how to plan your first year. You probably made some campaign promises that you may have forgotten about at this point because you're so busy. Talk about evaluating office needs, working on your management structure, some resources, and then of course questions. So first of all, where to begin? And I do know that I have some friends on here who are not elected officials, but I hope that you will be at some point, and I think you're really going to benefit from sort of hearing the nuts and bolts, so to speak, of how these things work, because you as members of the public or Democratic Central Committee persons do work with all of us elected officials. So first of all, if you are a newly elected official, you may sort of feel like you're drinking from a fire hose trying to figure out what all of your duties are. I had a few things, and these are just a few tips on how to get started. All of our jobs are guided by the Illinois state law. So that's the Illinois Counties Code, and that's a link to it right there on the slide. The Illinois Counties Code was really helpful for me. It's all in very legal speak, but one of the first things that I did was find the section of Illinois Counties Code that was for county treasurers, and I printed it out, put it in a binder, and I read over all of it, highlighting parts that I thought were really important. And I even came across some parts of the county's code that I realized that our county was not doing, and that the office wasn't fulfilling. So it was really, really helpful in learning the duties of the job. It outlines them, not always too clearly because it is, legalese, but very, very good information. There are also some other portions of the county's code and other laws that you may want to look at. For me, for example, I would obviously want to look at the property tax laws and learn about property tax and mobile home tax and how those things are dealt with. Of course, you will find a lot of information about what you do and what the job is from your employees. Some of them have been there for a very long time, and they're a wealth of information. So just, listen to them and hear everything they have to say, and hopefully they will be able to fill you in on a lot of the things that you need to do. One of the other things that I did when I came into office, and I sort of did it as an act of organization, just trying to get things organized in my own way, but it was beneficial twofold, because when I went through the former office holders' files, I was able to find out important information like who our vendors were, who our vendors have been in the past, maybe ordinances that have been created that I knew nothing about, those kind of things. So looking at the former office holders' files and getting them organized in your way is probably really important. In addition, my position as county treasurer has a actual formal training that's required. Some offices do not require a formal training, but they may have trainings out there for the offices. So I would be on the hunt for that if possible. You'd want to take in all of that information. My training is required by statute, and it's done through the Illinois Comptroller's Office. So look for trainings. And then lastly on this slide, just take your time. This cannot be all done overnight. There is no way that you can step into office and sit down in the chair and just know everything and start working right away. So don't expect to get it all done right away. And also, let your employees know that you need a little bit of time to evaluate what the duties are and kind of take it all in. So, all right. There will be a lot of people and groups who will influence you throughout your time in office. And right now, if you are just beginning your time in office, you're really setting the stage for the rest of your time. So it's really important that you find the balance with all of these influences. You can often find that you get pulled in many different directions. The public and the county board, for example, may have different ideas about what's the right thing to do. So definitely these are some groups to consider when you're making decisions, and kind of hold these 5 areas very close when you start to think about decision making. The public is the group that should be heard the most, but I find is often heard the least. They're not the people who we are necessarily around every day. We're around our employees, we're around other office holders, other politicians. So we really need to work hard to keep the public top of mind when we are starting and when we are making decisions, because those are the people who elected you. Those are the people who you are really working for. There are a lot of different ways to hear the public to make sure that you are in tune. For now, if you're a new office holder, you may have some intuition or outsider knowledge. I would say that that outsider knowledge is not going to last very long. I've been in office for about a year, and I would not necessarily say that I now have any outsider knowledge about, property taxes, other than that I pay them, but I take in a lot of property taxes. So, don't rely only on that, but some things are common sense. If there's small issues, you may be able to tap into your friends, just ask what your friends think about an issue that's going on in your office, or something that you maybe want to change that you think might help the public. One way that I really found to get a lot of information from the public is I started answering the phones in my office. And this was sort of by default, because during the beginning of the pandemic, there were times when I was the only person in my office. So I was answering the phone and I was just talking to the public. They were calling and they were telling me the issues that they had. And I could listen and kind of take all of that in. So, I had to do it. And as a result, I learned a lot. So I would recommend just doing it on a regular basis. And I still do now that my staff is back in the office. It just gives me a lot of information. Along the same lines, always list yourself as the main email contact for your office. For one, it's required by law that if you have a website, your email address is on it. But it also just helps you connect and stay in tune with the public. If you have something that's a little more serious that maybe is going to require some county board action or action from whatever board that you work with, something that may be a big budget item that you may want to take to social media or work with surveys for larger issues to find out how the public really feels. We don't want to necessarily make a referendum, but you can definitely get a lot of information by surveying people and through social media. Of course, and I mentioned this before, most knowledge in your office will come from your employees. As you work with them and learn from them, they're going to tell you what they think is working and what is not working in your office. When you do hear from your employees, you want to be aware of bias. This is the case everywhere that I have worked. Sometimes employees will think first about how a certain action or a change is going to affect their job, not necessarily the public. And there is a balance that you have to strike there, because you do want your employees to be satisfied with their job. You don't want them to be overworked, but you also need to be aware that they may be thinking about how busy they're going to be in their day first, and not necessarily about that first slide we saw, dealing with the public being the highest ranking in your decision making. You're also going to hear a lot from other office holders and other offices. So they can be a wealth of knowledge if they've been there for longer than you have. They're going to tell you about the history of the county, maybe the history of the the courthouse or whatever organization that it is that you are working for. They're going to be knowledgeable about the inner workings too, and that includes union contracts, HR, health insurance, anything that, you know, you're still at a new job. You may be an elected official, but you are at a new job and there are things that you're just not going to know. So other office holders can be great to tap into and give you that insider information. They're going to have opinions about all facets of the county. They're going to have opinions about your office and maybe, you know, how it's been run in the past and that sort of thing. I would say listen, but don't feel the need to manage your office exactly like they say or exactly like they manage their offices. One example of this is that in the beginning of the pandemic, and one of my fellow office holders, Frank Bird, is on this meeting, so he could attest to this too. In the beginning of the pandemic, we have 4 offices on the ground floor of the courthouse: the county clerk, circuit clerk, county board, and the treasurer's office. And in the beginning, there was a really big push for consistency among our 4 offices and how we did business. If we were closed to the public, if we were open to the public, what days, what hours, if we had employees that could work from home, those sort of questions. We were making a futile, it turns out, attempt to all be alike when the duties of each office is completely different, and you have to make decisions guided by the duties, not guided by what the whole rest of the courthouse or administrative building is doing. So now we sort of, you know, there are rules in our courthouse about hours when the courthouse is open to the public. But in terms of whether or not we have employees at home, working from home, or, you know, whether or not our door is open at certain times, those are decisions we make on our own now at this point. Another big influencer for you is going to be your county board or your board of directors, or if you're on a township, your township board. In most cases, it's true that the board holds the purse strings. This is, you know, at minimum, what your board will do. It's different everywhere. I have learned over the years that the level of involvement of the board can vary from totally hands-off, office holders do your thing, to being very involved in the inner workings of your office. So definitely, it's very important to learn how involved your county board has been in the past and learn what their expectations are. And the other thing you need to address, or possibly, is, do you need to repair a strained relationship that may exist between your office and the board that you're working with? And this doesn't, you know, mean that it was even from the last office holder. It could have been 2 or 3 or 4 office holders ago, back in 1965, that, you know, there was some dynamic that changed between the board and your office that caused a trouble that has not been yet repaired. So I think that if you can think about that and address that and repair that strained relationship, it would be really great and good for the people of your county. So yep, that's the county board. They are very important for you to stay engaged with. I would say if your board has committees, go to all the committee meetings, go to the main meeting. If they have subcommittees of committees, go to those meetings as well. You want them to know that you're involved, that you're engaged, and that you're listening to the things that they are working on. And then finally, we're all Democrats here, the Democratic Party. So you're going to get, you know, possibly phone calls from members of your party, other precinct committee persons, leaders in your party, informing you about certain issues that may have nothing to do with the job you're doing or your office, but that are important to the party. All I can say about this is be at the table. It is very important to me to be part of the original conversation when issues come up. It helps me stay engaged. I think it helps the party by having all of us office holders involved. So you'll want to stay involved with your local party, and then you can also stay involved at the state level with the Illinois Democratic County Chairs Association. There are lots of great trainings. There was a training last week for board members. There's another training coming up related to criminal justice reform. There in the past, I've attended the candidates boot camp. I've attended get out the vote trainings. Back in the day when we used to have them in person, and Dan would come down to Carbondale or Murfreesboro. So there's just a wealth of knowledge that is related to things that are going on now and in the future when we get closer to election time, learning about the election and how to get out there and get other Democratic candidates elected. So I'll pause if we have any questions, Jillian.
You don't have any questions quite yet.
Okay.
Just a reminder that if you have any questions, you can feel free. We'll have some time for Q&A at the end, but feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat as we go along and as you think of them too.
Okay. So as we move on, we're going to talk about planning your first year in office. For some of you, this may not be your first year, but you can still get some good tips from this. We'll talk about some campaign promises and how you might fulfill those or begin to fulfill those. Talk about evaluating your office needs. And that's not a picture of my office, but it does look pretty old. So I thought it related, and my office needs some updates. And then we'll talk about management. That's a picture of all of my staff in our office. We do, every time someone has a birthday, we do have cake. It's changed a little bit since COVID because we don't eat the cake together, but we do have cake still. So planning your first year, the campaign promises that you made, first and foremost, don't forget about them. It's really easy to get into the groove and start doing the job and realize it's been 6 months since you won the election and you haven't thought anything about your campaign promises that you made. So get moving on that. It's time now. If you won in November, get moving. You'll want to get advice from your employees about how to implement them. I can't think of any other way of how to start. That employees are going to be able to tell you how it can happen. I would be prepared for pushback. It's possible that they may not like the change that you are bringing up. Don't take it as a no necessarily, but do listen to what they have to say about what may be possible roadblocks to the idea that you had in your campaign. You can start creating a timeline and your employees can help you with that. Keeping in mind that some things may take longer than you think, and there may be a little more red tape than you think. You may have to go to your board. There may have to be a resolution or an ordinance created. It also could be a larger budget item than you expected it to be. So you may have to address it in the following budget year when you are able to write your own budget and control the budget. So be patient, create a timeline, work with your employees. And then finally, when you do implement the change, because you will, you want to find a way to let the voters know that you have followed through. Our small offices don't often get huge press, but when we do make a change in my office, I always put out a press release, and I do it whether or not I think it's going to get published or not, because sometimes it's a slow news day and they will pick up my press release, and I'm thrilled that that information has gotten out to the public. So use the media, and then use your own social media to put that information out there. Make sure everybody, you know, your friends, your Democratic Party are sharing the information on social. Just get that information out there so everybody knows that you do follow through. And next, evaluating your office needs. Again, you'll notice the theme, your employees. Ask your employees about the gaps. What did they think needs to change? What's missing in the office? Just some really basic things that they may come up with, you know, like this carpet needs to go, and we haven't been able to convince anybody to get rid of it. That's, you know, something that they may see as really important. So evaluate all of those things, and work with your employees to kind of get some knowledge about that. Observe for possible opportunities for efficiency. And the way that I did this is I just kind of jumped right in and worked right alongside my employees. During our tax cycle, I stood at the counter and worked with members of the public. I processed tax payments, basically did anything I could that was the same as what my employees were doing. And I caught a few things that I, you know, questioned, you know, why are we doing it this way? Is there a possibility that we could make it quicker, easier? Reevaluate your budget needs for the next budget year. It is highly likely that you are operating under a budget that you did not create. So the next year you will have an opportunity to look at your budget and make any changes that you need to. Coming from a county that does try to stay fairly conservative in our budgeting, I would say not to, like, you know, go wild and ask for a much larger budget, but you definitely want to see if there's anything that you can shift around to meet the needs that you want to implement, the changes that you want to make. And then finally, the state and local government records management programs. That is probably not going to ring a bell to most of you, but it, to me, just means the old files. When I walked into my office, there were a lot of old files, and I was sort of surprised that we were keeping them all. And then I was told that we have to. So, you know, it's just these little things that we don't know when we're running for office or members of the public. The records management is managed by the Office of the Illinois Secretary of State, and I've included a link here so you can get to that website that talks about records management for each office. But they will help you determine what records you can destroy, what you have to keep, and for how long. So extremely helpful information from them in just keeping your office organized and cleaned up. And then finally, working on your management structure. If you have unions, it's going to be very important to read the contracts. For me, we do have union employees in my office, and it has been very helpful to have the structure of the union contract. That helps me understand vacation time, sick time, any disciplinary action that I have to take. Those are pretty much all outlined and set up already in the union contracts. So that really helped me. Sure, you read it. It is extremely important. I love my union employees and want them to know that I'm doing everything to uphold that contract that they've created with the county. Beyond that, you'll want to determine the past practices and look into what you want to change. There was an office that I heard about at one point that was letting people take half-hour lunches so that they could leave a half an hour early for the day. You know, if I were an office holder coming into that personally, I would not want that practice in place. The other office holder might be totally fine for you. But just look at those little things and find out what you want to change. Ask the employees, again, what do they want to see change? Is there anything that, you know, is kind of not working for them, that hasn't worked in the past, that they have ideas about? And finally, you are, when you start in your office, you are setting the tone as a supervisor. This is definitely extremely important. You, as office holders, and as you know, a lot of us are kind of working in the trenches with our staff, but it's really important that your staff understands who the supervisor is, who they should go to with problems, and that they have that supervisor staff relationship with you. Just to follow that, I would recommend having job descriptions for all of your employees if they don't exist already, and doing performance evaluations. This just helps kind of set the stage for the expectations that you have for your employees. And then the evaluation helps them and helps you. It gives them an opportunity to be better at their job, and it also gives them an opportunity to sit alone in a room with you when they might not have that opportunity, and they can kind of give you some feedback that you maybe wouldn't have got if you didn't do those performance evaluations. So I think that's very important. The size of your office is going to determine how you work from day to day. So, you know, if you have 2 employees and you're the office holder and that is your entire office, that makes it pretty clear to me that you are going to be doing a lot of the day-to-day operations of the office. You're going to be coming in at 8 and leaving at 4 and doing a lot of the work. If you have a staff of 30, for example, you may be doing more administrative work while you have those staff to do the day-to-day. It's just going to depend on your office. I would say that most of us are from small counties, and we are kind of also the worker bees in our county offices. All right, and finally, I just have some resources for you guys. I say here, connect soon and often. Of course, I've told you about a lot of people to connect with: your county board, your employees, your Democratic Party, and here are some more. If you're a county office holder, we have the Illinois Association of County Officials, or IACO. They have really great conferences where you learn just a lot about anything about being a county official. And then United Counties Council of Illinois is a similar organization, but I found they focused a little bit more on county board issues. Both of those organizations have really good email lists where they send out important information that you can use at any time. IACO also has what they call affiliate organizations. For me, that is the Illinois County Treasurers Association, and that's split up into zones. So that's what this picture is here. That is our zone Christmas party from 2019 without masks. We did not have a Christmas party in 2020, but the zone meetings are extremely helpful. Connect with your other office holders, people who have the same exact job as you in this state. are having the same troubles. Trust me, they either have come across it in the past or they're currently dealing with some of the same issues. And then again, the IDCCA, Illinois Democratic Chairs Association, again, just keep an eye out for more trainings and keep connected. Another organization that has some great in-person stuff when we're going to be able to do it again. It's really fun and engaging, really important organization. And then your vendors, they can help you out with all kinds of things. Chances are, if you're having a problem with your software or even a problem that's just general to your office, your vendor has worked with another county at some point who's having the same issues. I'm not talking here about new vendors, like vendors that you're not working with, people selling to you. I'm talking about vendors that you currently use and that can help you easily solve a problem that you didn't see a solution to. You can also check out the websites of officials from other counties. I did that a lot when I first started. I wanted to see what everybody else was doing, what they said their job duties were, what they published out there on the website compared to our county. So that's very helpful. And then last but not least is your state's attorney. If you work for county government, if you work for a municipality or a township, chances are you also have some sort of counsel that works with you on civil matters. So where the state's attorney comes in for me is I work with them on interpreting the statutes. If I'm to a point where I've read it 15 times and I still cannot understand, I will go to my state's attorney. And one time I actually had a meeting with our state's attorney where we discussed for at least 30 minutes what 10 days actually means. Sounds really simple, but it's not. And so those are the things that you can go to your state's attorney for. They're very, very important. And then there are going to be other issues that may even come up in courts related to your position. I'm the treasurer. If there's an eminent domain case or something, I may be called to give information about whether or not property taxes are paid. So the state's attorney will also be involved in those matters as well. So they're very, very helpful. All right, so that is the nuts and bolts of serving in countywide office. It's a ton of information, but hopefully help to give everybody some tips on how to get started.
Great, thank you so much. And I know we had a couple folks join late. I think we had some technical issues. So just a reminder that we did record this session. So if you missed any bit of it, you'll get a recording of it. I wanted to start off our question and answer. Were there any expectations you had before you got into countywide office that completely changed once you actually got into office? Sort of an expectations versus reality.
I'm going to say, you know, I think that each office, it really depends on who you are and the type of manager you are. I'm trying to stop my screen share, but I can't get my mouse up. You know, I worked for 16 years at SIU, and I was what we call a worker bee. I worked in marketing and I worked in communications and I was a web developer, and I worked hard a lot. And I guess that I was not expecting to be treated as much as an administrator as I have been, because I do consider it a working job situation. So, I mean, maybe just that transition to being the big boss is, you know, it's a lot different than you would expect. And I think my employees would agree, though, that I try to get my hands on and continue to be a worker bee. So, yeah.
All right, we had another question come in. Someone asked, can I ask if you've had any experience with disgruntled employees when you were first into office, and whether it was just differences on politics or the change in leadership and how you handled that?
Yeah, it happens. I've supervised people for quite some time, and prior to this, I supervised a lot of student employees. And with younger students, you know, they're just learning, they're just getting in the workforce. There are issues, and so I did luckily learn a lot of skills about how to manage those situations prior to becoming treasurer. But it definitely has a lot more gravity when you realize that, you know, you have 6 staff and you've got one who's not maybe getting along with the other 5, you know, or maybe there's a problem. Maybe they've made some big mistake that you have to address. And, you know, in my experience, the way that I handle those things is just to jump right in and hit it head on. I don't beat around the bush. It's always hard, and every employee has a different personality style and takes discipline differently. Or even, it doesn't even have to be discipline. It could just be a conversation about, are you okay? You know, what's going on? So you kind of have to very quickly learn the personality styles of your staff and think very consciously about how you are going to have that back and forth where that problem gets solved. I mean, just nip it in the bud, though. That's my that's my biggest piece of advice about anything going on in your office that's, you know, that's got anything out of sync.
Yeah, and I think we had a comment earlier that there might sometimes be you know, someone saying, well, this is the way we've always done it, but
Yes.
You come into office to actually change the way that it's always been done. So there might be some disagreement there about that too, for an employee that might have been in the office for a lot longer than you.
Yeah.
We had another question come in, and I think this is important too, because I noticed when we were all introducing ourselves in the chat that we had some people who are running for office, maybe not a countywide office, maybe a municipal office coming up in April. Do you have any tips for anybody who wants to learn more about how the office is run, or maybe things that they should know as they're running for office about how an office is run, so that they can better engage with the public and know what kind of campaign promises that they can make?
That's a really good question. There are a couple of ways that I would suggest to go about that. If there is a board involved, or if you're running for a board, that is quickly very easy, because you just need to start attending their meetings. If you're going to run for a board, attend the meetings all the time, get a feel for what they're doing, decisions they're making, what you're saying is wrong. If it's an office that's maybe a little more closed off, where you maybe don't have that information, those same resources that I pointed out, I think could really help. Going to the Illinois state laws to look at what the law is regarding the duties of that position. Going to other websites for other office holders in those same offices throughout the state. Look at the website of the current office holder that you may be either replacing or running against. A lot of those same resources, I think, apply. It's not the same as sitting down in the chair in the office with the staff, and you're not going to get to do that. But it will give you the general information about what the duties are in the job. And if you want to find out, like, if an office is not doing something, you know, or if there's something that the public would like to see differently, then I would say to start reaching out to people and asking about how they deal with that office and what they would like to see change. People in the public. Yeah.
Right. And in your role, have you experienced any backlash from people who have not voted for you? And how do you handle that controversy?
I'm the tax collector, so there's a little bit of tension between the taxpayer and the tax collector in general anyway. I have not yet had anybody make it blatantly obvious that they did not vote for me while they were talking to me or standing in my office. One of the things that I work on in my office, like, we work with the public, we are taking money, we're behind the desk, and customer service is number one, most important thing in my office, and that includes me too. So when I'm out there or I'm answering the phone, I've got that smile on to get them. A lot of the people who are calling my office are having a problem, and they're trying to solve a problem. So, you know, letting them know it's going to be okay, and then getting them to that next step, where you can give them some advice on how to move forward with their issue, is the only thing that I can say to do. I don't know that I would really entertain someone who wanted to talk politics in my office. I would probably say, we're not going to talk politics in my office, you know.
All right, well, we are nearing the end of our time, so I'm going to put my email address in the chat if anybody has any follow-up questions. I believe your email was also in the presentation if anybody has any follow-up questions. Again, we're going to send out those slides and send out the recording of this training. So I think we'll wrap it up here, and thank you so much for joining us here tonight and sharing your expertise. And thank you to all of our participants for joining us here tonight. I hope it was informative, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, everyone.